Welcome back. All right, it is that time of the week again where I make people angry by placing teams on this puck board here from 32 through 1. And there's been a couple of big movers down this week, and there's been a few that have moved up. And Utah being one of the biggest movers, tied for the most spots anybody moved up this week. I have a reason to wear my white Utah jersey. So there we are. Number 32 this week, dropping 7 spots from last week. Buffalo. I have no idea. No idea what's happened in Buffalo. I don't have any idea what's going on in that locker room or within the organization. But Buffalo's gone from a team that a month ago, heck, even a couple weeks ago, we were looking at and thinking, maybe if they can get on a bit of a run, but they look lost right now. And they're finding ways to lose games that maybe they shouldn't. Tonight against Washington, a really good opportunity for them to maybe get a point, something against a team that's playing really, really well, and they end up finding a way to lose that game. So for Buffalo, they're 32nd this week on the board. Number 31, moving up 1 spot from last week, Nashville. So this pushes Nashville out of last place. Nashville, of course, had the win over Dallas this week, which pushes them past Buffalo. Otherwise, they'd still be 32nd and Buffalo be 31st. Then Nashville loses tonight against Colorado, but it was a close game. So now with Nashville, we're to the point where we're measuring, are they big losses or little losses? Well, the little losses aren't as bad as the big losses, and that's when you know your season is in trouble. So Nashville moves up the 1 spot. Number 30, also moving up 1 spot, Chicago. The Chicago Blackhawks are actually playing pretty well right now. Like, for instance, in New Jersey today, they were playing well, and then New Jersey just had a really strong third period because the Devils are pretty darn good. And, I mean, no fault to Chicago there. They almost got the comeback against the Islanders. They didn't, but they almost did. And so, I guess for both Chicago and Nashville, it's a similar situation. You measure what kind of losses they had. Could they have won that? And you're looking, in Chicago's case, for progression from guys like Bedard, from Nazar, Korchinski, which is something that in Nashville you don't really have. You don't have those young guys you're looking, okay, is he progressing? So a little bit of a different situation there. Number 29, also moving up 1 spot from last week, Detroit. Now, the Wings got a big win tonight over Toronto. They're going to need to use that energy to start winning more games. The problem Detroit's had really is just a matter of keeping up that momentum from one game to the next. So the next game I think is very, very important for the Detroit Red Wings, and we'll see whether or not they can win that next game, and then beyond that, right? For me to start moving teams out of this row, you've got to start showing that you can win on a regular basis. Which brings us to number 28, Montreal. They move up 1 spot from last week. They just move up the 1 spot because Buffalo dropped. That's really all it is. Buffalo drops, so Montreal moves up 1 spot. They got destroyed by Pittsburgh 9-2. Tonight, they played well against Winnipeg. They had a lead on Winnipeg, and then Winnipeg did what Winnipeg does. So Montreal ends up losing that game, but they were competitive in it. So for the Montreal Canadiens, at this point, it looks like they probably will end up being last in the East, although Detroit and Buffalo could give them a run for that. So Montreal just moves up the 1 spot. And the last of the teams moving up just the 1 spot from last week, Anaheim. The Ducks get the win tonight in Columbus, which, I mean, if you're a Columbus fan, that has to be frustrating because Anaheim's really a game you want to win at home, right? Anaheim's good on the road. Anaheim's road record's better than at home, but Columbus had a fantastic home record. They go out, they have a disastrous road trip. Now they've come home, and things haven't really got better for Columbus since coming home. So they're pulling themselves completely out, and Anaheim is pretty much out of the race in the West too, but Columbus is right there too. So I debated about whether or not to swap Columbus and Anaheim and decided not to. Just because one team beats another does not necessarily place that team ahead of the other on the board. So Columbus stays in the same spot they were last week. Last week they were 26. This week they're 26. Things are not great for Columbus right now. You really, if you're a Columbus fan, you're hoping they turn it around at home, but it has not taken place. Number 25, moving up 2 spots from last week, San Jose. Sharks are playing pretty well, and they probably should have got a point tonight against Utah. They lose that game in the final minute. I didn't penalize them for that. He didn't. And so it does make me wonder, like, maybe if San Jose and Anaheim were swapped, but I don't know if Anaheim should move up 3 spots. Like, winning in Columbus, do they move up that far? I could make the argument to put them ahead of Columbus. I don't know if I can make the argument to put them ahead of San Jose based on that game. But San Jose's playing some fun hockey. They're entertaining to watch. Celebrini did get rattled in the last minute of that game. He did stay on the ice, but keep an eye on that because it was weird. It's a weird little situation there where he could have tweaked something, and we'll see whether or not he misses any time. I don't think he will, though. So that's your bottom row. Now, the surprise to some may be the Rangers are not in the bottom row, but they're not far off. Seven spots down from last week are the New York Rangers. I cannot figure out why the Rangers are this bad. So I did the video on the fall of the Rangers, and I've seen people saying I was overestimating the Rangers. I wouldn't put it that way personally. I felt that 5-on-5 they had their problems last year. Their special teams were very good. Their goaltending was excellent. So as long as the goaltending's excellent, death-defying even, as long as the special teams are very good, it can cover for some of those flaws 5-on-5. Their 5-on-5 play this year, especially defensively, has been abysmal. Absolutely awful. They're leaving the goaltending hung out to dry, meaning the goaltending numbers are dropping off. And the Rangers are seemingly not interested in December in being in that playoff picture. They are doing their best to fall right out of it. So we'll see if anybody can jump in and stay in that spot that they occupied because, yeah, the Rangers just don't look all that interested in being a playoff team. I don't know how you fix that. Number 23, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Pittsburgh. They did win that game 9-2 against Montreal. It was a game against Montreal. So I had them swap spots with the team from last week. I feel like Pittsburgh at 23 is probably the right spot for them at this point. Although, if they can... I mean, the loss tonight against Ottawa was one thing, but if they can somehow rechannel that energy they had against Montreal the other night. But that was Montreal falling apart in the third as well. So yeah, Pittsburgh number 23. Number 22 on the board this week is the New York Islanders. So they swap spots with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Islanders are getting points, and they're winning often enough that they're still in the hunt. Like I said, the Rangers drop right out. I have the Islanders ahead of the Rangers. I have Pittsburgh ahead of the Rangers right now. It's a crazy time in the Metro Division where you've got 3 teams in a row from the Metro. In fact, 4 out of 5 from the Metro down here. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I feel like the Metro is always really strong. Usually we have like 3 teams from the Metro in the top row. And this season, it's not the case. How many Metro teams are in the top row this week? Oh, okay. All right. So looking at that really quickly, and all right, I see. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but it's not 4. It's not 3. All right. Number 21 this week, same spot as last week, St. Louis. So last week I did have some Blues fans that were not happy that they were not in the top 16, and there might be some wondering why they didn't drop a little bit this week because they lost against San Jose. Tonight they lose against Dallas. They only got a point because of Binnington. That's the only reason they get that point there. But for St. Louis, I think 21's the right spot for them. They're 14-4-4 now, or 14-4-3. I feel like 21st is the right spot for them right now. Number 20, dropping 2 spots from last week, Philadelphia. The Flyers are winning enough games, they're getting enough points that they're still in the playoff picture, but I will agree with people who feel like they'll probably fall off in the second half of the season, probably miss the playoffs by a bunch. A bunch meaning probably about 10 points, that kind of thing. I just don't feel like Philadelphia has enough offense necessarily to keep up any kind of a run. I hope I'm wrong. I think John Tortorella in the playoffs is very entertaining. So if Philadelphia did somehow get into a wild card spot and keep it until the end of the season, I think any team that plays Philadelphia in the first round might end up having their hands full because there'd be absolutely no pressure on the Philadelphia Flyers, and they play a very stifling defensive style of hockey that's not the most entertaining to watch, but it's not necessarily about entertainment value when it comes to the playoffs. Number 19, moving up 5 spots from last week, Utah. So there you go. Reason I'm wearing Utah, 5-spot jump. So that telegraphs that the highest jump any team makes this week is 5 spots, and there are a few that did so. Beginning with Utah, it does feel like they're getting it together. That win tonight in San Jose, I think it was impressive how well they played in that third period. And once they took the game over, that was it. And again, San Jose playing some pretty entertaining hockey. So I thought that was impressive. I think Utah's playing really well, and maybe they can jump into a spot in the West. There's definitely openings on both sides, whether it's the East or the West, for a team to jump in that we didn't expect this year. And I want it to happen because it does feel like things get really predictable in terms of who does or doesn't make the playoffs from one year to the next. So Utah jumping in might be kind of fun. All apologies to Arizona fans, because that would be really frustrating for Arizona fans to see their former team just make the playoffs the year after they leave. I know the circumstances are different. I get that. It doesn't mean they would have made the playoffs if they'd stayed in Arizona, but it's a good story for Utah at this point. Number 18, moving up one spot from last week, Ottawa. Ottawa's won 3 in a row. Winning 3 games in a row, impressive. November's done. I really think that's part of it. It feels like November, they just don't play very well, but they're not that far out of it because it doesn't look like the dividing line between the playoffs and not making the playoffs is going to be like 100 points this year. It looks like it'll be more around 90 points. So that definitely means we'll see some teams that might not have fantastic records make the playoffs, but I think that makes things entertaining as well. And Ottawa usually performs very well as an underdog. So if they make it into the playoffs as an underdog as a wild card, they might be a tough out in that first round. Number 17, dropping 6 spots from last week. And I didn't want Vancouver to be this low. They got the win over Florida. Absolutely, they got the win over Florida. That was the best game they've played at home all season. And they followed it up with the one that, to me, is the worst game they've played at home all season against Boston. So, Vancouver, the inconsistency is still a thing. Their home record is still not good. And I wonder coming out of tonight's game if things are going to change at all. Because it feels like something needs to change. This team has not been shy about making moves and trades when they need to. So maybe players shouldn't get too comfortable in that locker room. And I'm starting to have concerns about whether or not Demko came back too soon. Even though I know how long he was out, seeing his numbers for the first 2 games back, they're not Demko-like. I didn't expect him to be great, but I'm concerned if maybe his knee's still bugging him and if teams are going to take advantage of that. So teams know he's got, knee issues. You're going to do more cross crease passes. You're going to try to get him in motion, and then you're going to shoot it. And you have a good chance of getting those goals if his mobility, if his lateral movement has been impacted. So something to keep an eye on with the Canucks going forward. And I really hope next game out, Demko gets a shutout and all of that concern falls by the wayside, for me at least. Number 16, same spot as last week, Boston. Boston gets annihilated by Winnipeg. They get destroyed by Seattle, but then they turned around and destroyed Vancouver. So I'll say the Seattle and Vancouver games that cancel each other out. Winnipeg has been, at points this year, one of the top teams in the league, right near the top of the league overall. So Boston stays in the same spot as they were last week. But this upcoming week could see them drop out of the top 16. It's going to be interesting because Ottawa's right there. Boston has that number three spot. At least they have had they should still be the number 3 spot in the Atlantic right now. But I know Tampa Bay has games in hand, and I do think Tampa Bay is playing better than them. That's why they haven't shown up on the board yet. So Boston ahead of Vancouver. It just feels like, Vancouver, their home record, despite that game against Florida. The other problem is Florida then gets shut out again tonight. So maybe it was a statement of how poorly Florida's playing right now, as much as it was how well Vancouver's been playing. All right, number 15, also moving up 5 spots from last week, Seattle. They did lose tonight against Tampa, but Tampa's had a pretty good time on this road trip so far. And I thought Seattle played them pretty tough at points, and I think Seattle's playing well enough that maybe they end up being a team to jump into that playoff spot in the West. We shall see. I was kind of surprised to see Grubauer as the starter tonight, but I'm often surprised by who teams use as a starting goaltender for whichever game. But Seattle ends up jumping into the top 16 again, even though they lost against Tampa Bay tonight. But Tampa Bay's higher up on the board. I didn't really penalize them for that. Number 14, same spot as last week. It feels like Calgary's found their spot. It's interesting too because there was 3 weeks in a row that LA was number 15, and then they've cruised up. So maybe this is a sign Calgary's going to start moving up as well. And if you're a Flames fan, you have to be happy that Vancouver lost as they did tonight. Calgary gets that victory, so that gives them a little bit of an inroad there to get above and maybe stay above the line. Keeping in mind we've got 50 games left for everybody, a little over 50 games for everybody. So take it with a grain of salt maybe. But right now I think Calgary's playing well enough that 14th is the right spot for them. Number 13, and moving up 2 spots from last week, Colorado. The Avalanche getting Blackwood, I think, is huge for them. Wedgwood had a little bit of a tough start his last time out, but Wedgwood seems to be an upgrade for them so far too. So Blackwood, Wedgwood, good tandem, and I admire Colorado. Respect might be the better word. I respect Colorado for realizing that goaltending was an issue, addressing it before the Christmas break, and getting it fixed. Because I did see Abs fans saying this has been a problem for years. They're not fixing it. What's going on? What's Chris McFarland doing? He went out and I think he fixed it. I think Blackwood is an upgrade over what Georgiev was providing them. I think we saw that tonight in that game against Nashville, for instance. And the Abs all of a sudden kind of looking like a contender again. Number 12, same spot as last week, Dallas. I don't have much to add with Dallas. Tonight, they almost got goalied. It was that close. They almost got goalied. They didn't. They ended up overcoming that and getting that win in overtime. But then, they lost against Nashville as well. So for Dallas, I feel like 12th is the right spot. I did see there was another power rankings online that I saw where Dallas was 10th. And I saw Dallas fans saying it was very disrespectful. And I thought, yeah, disrespectful. I do apologize for that, but again, that loss against Nashville, it doesn't drop them. They had an overall decent week, but that loss against Nashville was a tough watch. That was a tough watch. One thing about having this channel and watching all the games, I don't ever tap out and just go play video games instead. Like, I don't want to watch this, so I force myself to watch games that 10 years ago I would have just said, it's time to fire up the PS4 because this game's over, and I can't do that anymore. But yeah, Dallas at points this year has been frustrating, and I feel like 12th is the right spot. Number 11, dropping 3 spots from last week. I did see a Canes fan today say that they expected Carolina to be in the 3rd row. No. They've lost 5 out of 7. Is there a reason for concern in Carolina? Absolutely. Is there a reason for panic? Well, we'll see on Wednesday when I get to my next panic index. But I don't think we're at panic yet. I think if they lose tomorrow, we might be getting close. Although we might be zeroing in on me being a jinx with whatever jerseys I wear for preview videos. Because if they lose both those games, I don't know, we might have verifiable proof, right? But either way, Carolina drops out of the top 10. Bit of a surprise for me. I don't think they're following the same path as the Rangers, but they have to turn this around. It's concerning what's going on there right now, but it's not panic yet. But tune in on Wednesday for the Panic Index, because you never know, that could change. Number 10, moving up 3 spots from last week. Tampa Bay is such a kick. I love that every week Tampa Bay moves on this board, and they move up a few spots, down a couple spots, up a few spots. Tampa Bay is all over the place. They're having a really good road trip, and yeah, they've looked quite good. Whether it was in Vancouver, whether it was in Calgary, or tonight in Seattle, they've looked very good. West Coast trips can be tough for teams from the East Coast. You have that big time change. In some cases, the travel itself can be kind of a pain. So, yeah, Tampa Bay has done pretty well so far. We'll see how the rest of this road trip goes for them, but so far, so good. I think there's still games left on the road trip, right? All right, number 9, dropping 2 spots from last week, Winnipeg. Winnipeg has started to get it together. They have started to get it together. I didn't feel like tonight's game against Montreal was a game that I could justify jumping them back into the top row. They dropped out of the top row early in the week. And so 9th is the spot they've been in the last few days on the board. And I think tonight's game against Montreal could help. Obviously, that blowout win over Boston was ridiculousness and all of that. So, yeah. But then they had the overtime loss against Vegas. And so for Winnipeg, they're 9th this week. We'll see whether or not they're in the second row next week. I know Winnipeg fans are probably not going to be very happy with me today, but well, I guess in the morning, because I post these on Sunday morning, right? So I'll wake up, I'll, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and check the comment section. Oh my God, Winnipeg. So, yeah, number 9. What do you mean I can never travel to Winnipeg? So I've been banned by the Premier. But yeah, Winnipeg's 9th this week. I just feel like right now there's 8 teams that are playing better. If you look at the record over their last 10, I think they're still 4-6 in their last 10 or 5-5. They are trending in a better direction. if that continues, they're going right back into the top row. Number 8 this week, moving up one spot from last week, the Kings. The LA Kings did have that loss against New Jersey this week. So the loss against New Jersey, then the win against the Rangers. I feel like 8's the right spot for them right now. The LA Kings have moved up. They've absolutely moved up. And so they're in the top row this week. We'll see if they can move up again. And I'm reminded of when we were in Anaheim last year, running into the announcer for the LA Kings, and him telling me the week that LA was first on the power rankings, they were very concerned because first on the power rankings was kind of seen as being a bit of a jinx. And yeah, I did have them number 1 last year. I did. I think it was just for the 1 week. It might have been for 2, but LA's back in the top row. I think they're playing quite well. I think New Jersey's playing pretty darn well too. So yeah, LA moves up into the top row. Number 7 this week, dropping 1 spot from last week, Toronto. The Leafs have been hanging around between 5th and 7th on my board for a while now. Let me just take a look here, look back. So they were 5th, then 7th, then 6th, this week 7th. So yeah, for the last month, it's been between 5th and 7th for Toronto. I do feel like this is right around the right spot for them. The loss tonight against Detroit definitely prevented them moving up. Definitely allowed me to, when I was, looking at this after tonight's games, to say, okay, Toronto, you go into 7th place. And then I tidied things up in 6 through 1. But yeah, Toronto in 7th to me feels like the right spot. We'll see if they stay there next week or not. Yeah, a loss against Detroit. Those are the tough ones. That if they lose the division to Florida by like a point or two, you're going to look back at losses like that and say, well, what happened? But speaking of Florida, they dropped 4 spots this week. They're number 6. The losses on the road concerning, and the fact that they've been shut out in back-to-back games. Where did that come from? The Florida Panthers have such a lethal attack that seeing them struggling to score for 2 games in a row feels like I'm in Bizarro World. This doesn't feel like it's real. The Florida Panthers should be able to score a goal over a 2-game period. Should be able to. So I am still thinking they're going to have a game of 7 or 8 goals soon. They're due for that. Maybe it'll be when they get back from the road trip. Maybe when they get back from the road trip, they'll start kicking the you-know-what out of people. Maybe. They're still capable. Number 5, moving up 5 spots from last week, Edmonton. The Oilers are playing really strong hockey right now. I think that McDavid is playing playing his game. Like, I would say he's playing really, really well, but he's playing his game. And when McDavid's playing his game, he is, if not the best player in the league. He's at least top 5 or top 3, or we can have that debate some other time. That's not for these power rankings. For player power rankings, maybe. But McDavid and Draisaitl are really driving the ship right now, and the Oilers are doing quite well. They have pulled themselves very close to the lead in the division. Today's result was very good for them, which pulled them closer to the number 4 ranked Vegas Golden Knights. This again is where you can argue Edmonton in 4th place ahead of Vegas. You absolutely can. I'm having Vegas in 4th place. That's up 1 spot from last week. I think they're playing pretty darn well. I think Edmonton got the win on them today. But the score, I will agree with the announcers on this, Jack Michaels and Louis DeBrusque, that today's game didn't feel like it was as lopsided as the score ended up showing it. So I think Vegas played better than what the score showed. I think Edmonton just got some really good breaks there, which you need, of course, in the National Hockey League. But Vegas stays 4th place this week. We'll see if they stay there this upcoming week. Number 3, moving up 1 spot from last week, New Jersey. The Devils, number 3. And definitely having that bounce back year that we had hoped they were going to have this year. We being people who might have picked them to win the Stanley Cup in 2024. I might have done that. I didn't do that this year. But I did think they were going to bounce back and get back above the playoff line. And they've done that, and they look, I think, almost as good as they did 2 years ago. But it might be more sustainable than it was 2 years ago. I think the goaltending's better. I think the team's a little more mature. I think that Sheldon Keefe might be underrated as a coach a little bit. I think the amount of criticism you take in Toronto is ridiculous, and I think he's a bit better of a coach than people might give him credit for. So things are pretty rosy right now in the Garden State for New Jersey. Number 2, dropping 1 spot from last week, the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota getting destroyed by Edmonton the way they did. Drops them down to number 2. And again, for Edmonton fans, they move up 5 spots because of what they were able to do this week. If they can replicate that this coming week, it is very likely Edmonton ends up number 2. But number 2 this week is Minnesota. They just dropped the 1 spot. I don't think Minnesota's playing as well right now as they have been, but they're still finding ways to get points. And that's really key because you're going to have those times during the season where you're struggling. And if when you're not playing your A game, you're still getting points, that's not bad. That's not bad. Like today against Philadelphia, I don't think they had a great game, but they found a way to get the 2 points out of it. And that's really important. Plus, Brodin and Zuccarello came back. So while they lose Middleton to LTIR, getting Brodin back is important. Getting Zuccarello back gets that top line going. Minnesota might be back in first place not too long from now. Which brings us to first place. And number 1 is the Washington Capitals. So, Washington's number 1. Legitimately number 1. I think that they're playing the best hockey in the league right now. And they move up to first spot. I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. Like tonight against Buffalo, they found a way to get the 2 points. Every night they're finding a way to get the 2 points. And probably playing the best hockey in the league right now. Washington Capitals. So there you go. Number 1, Washington. I know Washington spent a lot of time at number 1. I want to say during the 2018-2019 season. 2017-2018 as well. I think they spent a lot of time at number 1. The Washington Capitals have been one of the better teams in terms of power rankings over the years. And this season they find themselves first place. And the Rangers are 24th. So coming out of last year's first round of the playoffs where the Rangers just manhandled Washington, I don't think any of us could have seen this coming the following season, right? So Washington's number 1, and they're the only Metro Division team in the top 10. Carolina's number 11. Next Metro team, Philadelphia, Islanders, Pittsburgh. Man, they're having New Jersey. Washington and New Jersey are 1 and 3. I'm blind. I swear I'm blind. So 1 and 3 are them, and then number 11, Carolina. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Next week, of course, being the Christmas Power Rankings. So we're going to do something creative and a little different for the Christmas Power Rankings, which means everybody hates it. That's generally how that works. But that's how it's going to get done again next week. I'm going to try to do it a little different than last year's Power Rankings that we did at Christmas. But I want to have fun with it. I do want to have fun with the Power Rankings we do at Christmas. So thanks again for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. And I will talk to you again soon.